for reasons that range from just about understandable to absolutely bizarre. The following performers were sometimes rather strictly told that they were not permitted to do certain things whilst wandering around a set in character, or just going about their daily lives outside of it. So I am Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 10 things you didn't know actors were banned from doing. Number 10. Jean Harlow wasn't allowed to get married. Hollywood was a very different place back in the 1930s. Back then, performers were often restricted and controlled in the wake of signing contracts with certain studios, with some of these companies even forbidding their talent from doing something as normal as getting married. It was heavily rumoured, and noted by the author of the Scandals of Classic Hollywood book, Anne Helen Peterson, that none other than the blonde bombshell herself, Jean Harlow, was banned from marrying her partner William Powell during this period. MGM, who she had signed a contract with at the time, had written a clause into her contract forbidding her to marry. The reason? Because a bombshell just had to be single, right? The Fixers, Eddie Mannix, Howard Strickling, and the MGM Publicity Machine book written by E.J. Fleming also stated that Harlow ended up getting pregnant during that affair. And when she got in touch with MGM's head of publicity, Howard Strickling, after learning of the news, a Mrs. Jean Carpenter eventually made her way into Good Shepherd Hospital to quote-unquote get some rest. Not suspicious at all. The Hollywood sex symbol would then only be seen by private nurses and doctors during her time there. Number 9. Rebel Wilson was banned from losing weight during her Pitch Perfect years. After bursting onto the scene as one of the hottest comedy actors on the planet, following on from her hilarious work in the likes of Bridesmaids and Pitch Perfect, Australian star Rebel Wilson eventually felt like she wanted to pursue some different roles. In those early Hollywood years, the routinely comical performer had very much found herself being typecast as the fat, funny friend, as she put it, and while she would reveal on an episode of the Call Her Daddy podcast that she did love playing those parts, she was getting a little fed up of being pigeonholed around that time. Frustratingly, despite wanting to get healthier, the actor's contracts for the Pitch Perfect franchise stated that she wasn't allowed to drop a noticeable amount of weight while she was appearing as Patricia Fat Amy Hobart in the film series. Along with being banned from losing anything over 10 pounds, said contract also apparently wouldn't allow Wilson to gain that same amount either. In other words, once she put pen to paper on that Pitch Perfect deal, Wilson was required to kind of stay at that weight, as she put it. A few years on from that franchise reaching its end though, Wilson finally got the chance to dive into what she called a year of health in 2020, eventually losing a massive 77 pounds. Good for her. Number 8. Pierce Brosnan wasn't allowed to wear a tuxedo outside of James Bond movies. What typically springs to mind when the name James Bond enters the average conversation? A martini being shaken, not stirred, a collection of unforgettable enemies, his fondness of the opposite sex. But perhaps the most recognizable element of the entire 007 package are the world-famous MI6 agent's legendary suits, and the fact Bond regularly sported a tuxedo in just about every single one of his big screen missions actually affected another project the mighty Pierce Brosnan appeared in. During John McTiernan's 1999 romantic heist movie The Thomas Crown Affair, Brosnan's Thomas Crown could be seen wearing a rather bizarre blue suit with an opened collar and an untied white bow tie. This wasn't just a bold outfit choice for the character though. Brosnan apparently wasn't put in a standard tuxedo for this black and white ball because he was still attached to the iconic role of Bond. It was rumoured that there was a rule in Brosnan's 007 contract that banned him from throwing on that type of outfit for anything outside of the Bond world, with McTiernan also noting in the aforementioned movie's audio commentary that his star's commitment to playing the agent with a license to kill stopped him from donning a tux in the Thomas Crown Affair. Put simply, Brosnan seemingly didn't have a license to tux away from a 007 picture. And speaking of all things James Bond, I want to know right now, who do you think is the best ever James Bond? Was it Pierce Brosnan or one of the others? You let me know in the comment section down below. Number 7. Most folks are banned from running with Tom Cruise. When he's not throwing himself off the top of buildings or cliffs, flying helicopters or dropping out of a plane, Tom Cruise can usually be found sprinting like a man possessed during pretty much every one of his movies. Whether he's rapidly moving away from incoming storms, racing across the top of an airport, or running through the streets of London, nobody really does it better than the Mission Impossible legend. More often than not, however, Cruz is found doing all this galloping very much on his own, with the star typically being the focus whenever his characters find themselves having to get a move on. Instead of just being a coincidence, this is actually a strange rule of sorts, something Cruz's The Mummy co-star Annabelle Wallis told THR she learned when asking if she could join him for a big screen sprint in that movie. The Hollywood superstar would eventually agree to chuck in a few co-running scenes after seeing Wallis move on a treadmill. Sounds a bit weird, that. And though he did also actually share a run with Kobe Smulders in Jack Reacher Never Go Back, and has made the odd other exception to this no-run rule over the years, it seems that the majority of his other co-stars are strangely banned from getting a jog on with Tom on screen. Number 6, Tom Holland legally wasn't allowed to lose weight he already had. Another Hollywood star who legally wasn't allowed to lose weight after signing on to appear in a movie, a young Tom Holland was put in a strange situation during his preparations for Ron Howard's 2015 historical drama In the Heart of the Sea. As Holland would reveal in an interview with Independent around the time of the movie's release, the scene he was most proud of involved his cabin boy Thomas Nickerson being very much starved in one sequence. But in order to make his character look like he was emaciated, the then 17-year-old actor had to bizarrely put some weight on first. You see, Holland was soon informed when he began getting into shape for the part that due to his age, he was legally forbidden from dropping any weight that was already on him at that point. So he began putting on all the weight he could before then cutting those pounds off for the scenes requiring him to look starved. Even after going through that no doubt tough process of packing on and then taking off the weight due to these rules though, a ridiculously dedicated Holland would later admit that he still ended up losing a bit more than he was supposed to. Oops. But all those nights of going to bed hungry while shooting at least meant that Holland certainly looked the part as a truly famished youngster lost at sea. Thanks for checking out this video today, folks. Now go and hit that subscribe button down below for more of this what culture stuff in your life. Number 5, actors are banned from kicking Dwayne Johnson and other actors' asses too much, both inside and outside of a wrestling ring. When was the last time you can honestly remember seeing Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson getting his ass royally whooped? When it comes to the big screen at least, the Great One's tendency to come out on top more often than not is no accident though. As revealed in a Wall Street Journal report, anyone tasked with fighting Johnson in a scene in the Fast and Furious franchise is not allowed to look like they've defeated the People's Champion, thanks to rules in his contract that limit the amount of punishment his character endures in a throwdown. The likes of Jason Statham and Vin Diesel, both Johnson's co-stars in the series, have similar demands in their own contracts, making any scene involving these performers clashing with each other a bit of a choreography headache for the filmmakers. It's not entirely clear whether Johnson still has this particular no-lose rule in his contracts when appearing in movies outside of the Fast universe too. But if he does, that would mean that all of his co-stars are technically banned from laying the smack down on this WWE legend. Number 4, a few actors have been banned from going to Disneyland/World over the years, stepping away from the things actors have been banned from doing on set, or whilst preparing for a role for these next few entries. You'll probably be shocked to learn that a few of the business's top performers have been banned from one very specific place. The happiest place on earth! That's right, both the already mentioned Rebel Wilson and Full House star John Stamos have found themselves on the do not enter list at Disneyland/World at various points. Wilson's decision to take a selfie inside of one of the park's secret bathrooms was actually illegal at Disneyland, with the bridesmaid star telling The Daily Show that she was barred from the place for 30 days following her photo. That being said, the punishment wasn't really that extreme, as the House of Mouse opted to phone up the star and just start the ban when she had 30 days in her schedule where she would be too busy to visit anyway. How polite. Stamos, on the other hand, found himself being specifically forbidden to stay at a certain hotel within the Walt Disney World Resort. Why? Well, following on from filming some promo footage at the Glen Floridian Hotel alongside the Beach Boys, as you do, Stamos revealed in his memoir, If You Would Have Told Me, that he ended up in the middle of a wild jacuzzi after party, and he eventually got too drunk to speak. As he'd find out later, that crazy party, or more specifically, the bikini girls who continued partying and smashed some champagne bottles in the jacuzzi after Stamos had left, actually resulted in the actor earning a ban from that Disney World hotel. But you'll be pleased to learn that this tale had a happy ending too, with Stamos eventually explaining he wasn't the bikini boy responsible for that damage, and now being welcome to return to this magical place. You love to see it. Number 3, actors were told not to wear certain Halloween costumes during the recent strike. It simply would not be Halloween without the sight of many a movie lover wandering around town, dressed as their favourite superheroes, villains, or other unmistakable big screen personalities. However, with last year's spooky season falling right in the middle of the SAG-AFTRA actors strike, that union opted to throw out a pretty unexpected rule heading into Halloween. As said union continued to engage in contract negotiations with Hollywood studios and streaming services, SAG-AFTRA sent out some guidance for what their members should probably look to wear during their trick-or-treating sessions in 2023. Dressing up as characters from non-struck content, or generalized characters and figures such as ghosts, zombies, spiders, etc., was the recommended option for the actors sitting within SAG-AFTRA, meaning these stars were pretty much being told not to go full Ken, Barbie, or Oppenheimer come October 31st. As the guidance added, let's use our collective power to send a loud and clear message to our struck employers that we will not promote their content without a fair contract. But it wasn't long before a number of performers took aim at this controversial guidance online, with Deadpool star Ryan Reynolds even comically posting on X that he would be sure to scream the word scab, a term used to attack those who break the rules of a strike, at his young daughter, adding that she's not in the union but she needs to learn. In the wake of both parties finally reaching an agreement though, these stars can now very much dust off their pink cowboy hats and super suits in a few months' time. Happy Halloween indeed. Number 2, Colin Farrell wasn't allowed to smoke cigars in The Batman. He may have still found a way to incredibly disappear into the role of Oswald Cobblepot during Matt Reeves' 2022 superhero thriller The Batman, but Colin Farrell still felt his Penguin was missing one vital element on screen. Despite doing everything that he could to convince the studio to allow his gangster villain to be seen puffing a cigar in the epic noir picture, however, telling Jake's Takes that he even tried asking just to have an unlit one in his hands at one point, Warner Brothers were having none of it, and did not want any smoking to be seen in one of their PG-13 movies. But all is not lost, folks. A quick look at the trailer for the incoming The Penguin Max series reveals that Farrell found a way to get around his cigar ban for his new The Batman spin-off show, with the titular figure very much seen finally puffing a smoke in this incoming R-rated slice of Gotham. Now we just need that monocle. Number 1, David Prowse was banned from all Star Wars events. In order to bring the most iconic movie villain of all time to life on screen, the mighty vocals of James Earl Jones were often combined with the towering physique of the late David Prowse during the original Star Wars trilogy. Despite being such an important piece of those game-changing films though, the one-time bodybuilder eventually found himself on the outside looking in when it came to one specific part of the Star Wars experience. Prowse had clashed with Star Wars creator George Lucas a number of times over the years, with the Darth Vader performer being accused of spoiling a few big moments in the trilogy. The actor also made it clear that he was not happy about his voice being dubbed over in Lucas's movies, and in the end things got so tense between Lucas and Prowse that the latter was ultimately banned from all Star Wars conventions in 2010. The actor wasn't given any specific reason for his presence being forbidden at these events, only that he'd burnt too many bridges with Lucasfilm. Despite Lucasfilm not allowing the actor to appear at those Star Wars gatherings though, Lucas would still go out of his way to pay tribute to this integral part of those first movies in the wake of his passing, stating that David was up for anything and contributed to the success of what would become a memorable tragic figure. May he rest in peace. May the force be with you, Prowse.